How's the audio sound?
Good. All right, guys, we're back. All right, we had a little bit of technical difficulty there. So bearing with us, this is the first time I'm using this particular platform. And yeah, so here we go. We're going to see how it goes. Now, I want to make sure that I introduce my good friend and my mentor, Nate Schoemer. Okay. So, Nate, just a little bit about him, real quick. I've known him since about 2005. We were drill instructors together, and it's kind of the roles were reversed at that time. So I was, hey, what's up? Someone said hi, Gunner. Yeah, so the roles were reversed. So Nate was one of the greenbelt drill instructors in my company, Alpha Company, no big deal, Alpha Traz. If you know, you know. And I was a senior drill instructor at the time. So he didn't exactly get treated the best, but it was all out of love. Okay. And here we are, right? We've been friends for 20 years, just about this year. And he, oh, it's Reyes. Okay. Hey, Reyes, thanks for tuning in, man.
And we're getting older, man. 20 years. And
I
actually,
know.
it was 2006. I got there 2006.
Oh, you fucking boot.
Close enough, though. 19
Whatever.
years.
19 years. 19 years we've been friends. Um, yeah, that's right, because I started jiu-jitsu in 2005. But so anyways, Nate, good friend of mine. He is who started me on my dog training journey. I look at him as a mentor, a friend, close family friend, actually my best friend, um, and someone I depend on for guidance and everything. So he's really great. Nate, real quick, can you do me a favor and tell us just a little bit about how wonderful you are?
Well, I appreciate all that, brother. I mean, if we're going to talk about dog training background, I'll try to keep it short and simple. I started back in 2012, went to the Tom Rose School. I did their professional and master program, graduated top of my class. Only one person beat me. And I don't mind that he beat me because everything he did,
Someone beat you?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Fair and square, too.
can you get me his number so I can put him on this podcast instead?
Yeah, he's amazing. I'm actually going to try to get him on my show. His name's Walter. And I have no excuse because we had the same environment and we had the same dogs, essentially, because we both got Dutch Shepherds from the same breeder. And then we both had Malinois from the same breeder. And he beat me. He graduated in 16 weeks. I graduated in 17 weeks. And
Awesome.
I almost V-rated, which means 97% or higher on everything. I think I was 96.58 or something like that. So
I got a question, and this is super important. Did you sleep?
I did sleep more than I did as a drill instructor, which, of course, as we get older, we start to realize how important sleep is. In fact, I'm reading this book right now called Remember. And I just finished a chapter that's all about sleep, and not getting between 7 to 9 hours of sleep can increase the likelihood of you getting Alzheimer's as you get older. It's super important for everything.
Back there. That's not where I was going with it. Okay.
Yeah, getting slayed as green belts. So yeah, did the professional masters. Then I moved back to LA, started a dog training business called Orion Canine Academy. It was really successful. In between that time, I created a dog training app with Tom Rose. And so I had a really good relationship with Tom Rose, and we still communicated. And he hit me up and asked me if I wanted to come back to the school to be an instructor. So I finished up my clients, which I had a 2-month wait list. So I had to go through all them. So it took me a little over 2 months before I was able to come out. So then I went to the school, I taught there, and I did their advanced master program as well. Continued to work directly under Tom Rose, worked under Dave Van Garderen, who's now the head instructor at Kennelwood Academy, which is one of the top schools in the country to become a professional dog trainer. Dave's been on my channel a couple times, and he's incredible. Such a skilled and talented dog trainer. He won at the national level in IGP, and he competed at the world level. I don't know what place he got at Worlds, but he took first in nationals. So very talented dog trainer. I decoyed in PSA for a few years and then French ring for a little while. I was certified in PSA, which is Protection Sport Association, but I did not get certified in French ring. I just trained with clubs. So I never did it on the competitive level. And to be honest, there was a little bit of fear. Decoying for French ring is very, very challenging, and it's very scary too. I saw one of my friends get bit in the face by a protection trained dog.
Oh.
And I took this friend to the hospital. The damage was extreme, so extreme that it gave me a newfound respect for the power of these dogs and their capabilities, and it increased my fear. So anyone who's watching, if they're familiar with French ring, it's a fight at the higher levels. And I mean, you just did a trial of French ring. You got your brevet, which is really cool. And that's, I haven't done that myself with my dogs. I just trained with clubs. And so at the higher levels, the dogs have to get through the defense that is presented by the decoys. And there's different techniques in order to prevent the dog from doing that. And one is dropping the stick to try to stay low. And they train these dogs to go over the stick. And I had a couple dogs bite my collar. And it was just, I eventually got to the point where I was like, all right, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I'm getting a little bit older. I'll let the young bucks do that. They can run and fall down with these crazy dogs. You're about to say something?
Yeah. So actually, one of the decoys, he got the bite was up near the collar this past weekend. And you talk about these young guys, man, it was super impressive. So there was two decoys there. Okay. One's name is Seb. He's a French guy. He level 2 decoy. He was really good. He was close to our age. He was like, I think he's 40, 41, something like that. So it was cool seeing him getting down still. And then there's this young kid, right? He had to have been like 23. His name's Horacio. Okay. And so
is he from France?
No, he's from Mexico.
Oh, okay.
But he got his level 3 cert in France. The kid was good, man. Let me tell you, he was good. It was super impressive seeing both of them work.
They're athletes. I mean, they're straight up athletes in those suits. To be able to move that fast with that much agility and to be able to outsmart dogs in certain moments. I mean, part of the challenge is taking meters from a dog from some of the exercises, which I know you know what I'm talking about, for like the search and escort. I can never take any meters, maybe 1, maybe 2, but they would always catch me. And then there's these other guys that I would watch. They would get 5 meters. They were just lightning fast in the bite suit, but then they're also wearing competition bite suit when they are doing a competition, which is different from some of the other sports like PSA. Most of those guys wear semi-comp. They don't wear the competition one, which makes sense because the dog's usually biting in the same area and you're not having to move at the same sort of level as a French decoy has to. But then they feel those bites.
Yeah, so I got a comment here. So it says, shout out from the Philippine trainers. So check it out. This guy found me on my YouTube channel. Okay.
Nice.
And he has some really nice dogs. He's done some really good work. And he competes locally. He's won some obedience titles. I think he knocked out his BH. I think he won his BH. And I was super flattered. And this may come across a little arrogant or whatever, but he was like, it was my videos that kind of helped him along. But once again, that's attributed to you because a lot of what I do is based off of the things you've taught me and you continue to teach me.
And that's the thing. We all continue to learn constantly from one another. I mean, I don't stop thinking about this stuff. I watched a 3-year-old video, which is still a great video, of Ivan and Michael Ellis having a conversation. And then I also listened to the episode that Michael Ellis had with Oscar Mora, which is another great one. I think when it comes to, I think anyone who wants to be a good dog trainer, but also wants to be a really great teacher, someone who could transfer that information over to other people to where they can apply it relatively quickly and have a deep understanding, is to listen as much as possible to Michael Ellis. I think he's one of the most articulate teachers that there are for dog training, and he understands it at a level significantly higher than anyone else. In my opinion, when it comes to teaching, Michael Ellis is the GOAT. So I listen to his stuff all the time. In fact, I'm thinking of signing up for his online program that he has now. So he has a subscription thing. I don't think he's doing the big courses anymore where he would do the 5 months where people would come down for 5 months, similar to Tom Rose or Kenilwood Academy or what Jonathan Katz has going on at his school. I don't think he's doing those longer programs anymore. I think mostly it's online now. But if you listen to him speak, you can really tell that he knows what he's talking about. And so I listen to him constantly. And of course, other people. I mean, we were talking about Nipo Po, you and I, not too long ago. And then I was talking to a few other trainers about training without conflict, which is Ivan's school. But it's a never ending thing. And it's what's so fun about it. It's almost like the back when you're looking at jujitsu. Like
okay, here we go.
Back, right? It's like, it's something that most people could do in the very beginning, but there are so many small details to that position. To get great takes a lot of effort. So you can jump in and start doing it at the early stages, but to get really good and the complexity of that simple position far exceeds a lot of other positions, and you have that full control. So I kind of look at dog training the same way. We can take what we know as dog trainers and the trainers in the Philippines, when they're teaching other people, we could take most people and get them to a basic level of understanding. But to really understand it and to really be able to work with any dog, regardless of the situation, the environment, the dog's temperament or disposition, that's what keeps it interesting and what keeps us going. And it's funny too, the more I listen to things. So I had another trainer telling me that they were studying another trainer that talks about the dog's baseline or the dog's home base. And as he was explaining it, I said, that's just the dog's temperament. That's what you're talking about. And we've talked about this as well before, where trainers will start to rename things that already exist. So like they're saying the home base is the dog's normal behavior without any sort of external influences. That's what temperament is. The dog's temperament, that is their baseline. That is their home base. That's what a dog is when there's no external factors. And that's how it's probably defined. I mean, if you look it up, you might see something similar to that. But anyways, I'm going in all kinds of different directions right now.
For sure. Bring it back real quick, Nate.
Yeah.
All right. Man, I was going to just step out of the room for a little bit there for a second. All right. So, yeah. So another thing about Nate, he does do jiu-jitsu. He's really good at it. He doesn't wear the pajamas too often, though. He's more of a spandex type of guy.
I did the pajamas for about a year and a half under Lucas Barbosa.
Yep.
I was choking people with the pajamas. I enjoy the pajamas. They're fun.
They are. They're amazing. They're amazing. So as you can see, Nate and I, we have a lot in common. I feel like our roles are a little reversed when it comes to jiu-jitsu and dog training. So in jiu-jitsu, I have, I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to someone entrust me with awarding me with a black belt. And, I do okay. And, Nate isn't a black belt yet. He should be higher than what he is, but it is what it is.
People have to watch out though. I had a black belt tell me, I thought it was pretty funny. After we rolled, he said, "You are deceitfully dangerous."
Right.
Is what he
said. No, you're good. I remember we rode. I was still a brown belt when we rode, but I was very impressed with you. You were really good, and you're strong and athletic and stuff. But going back, in dog training, you are without a doubt 100% the black belt, and so it's really nice to see that role reversal. And so one thing I want to touch on, and we've kind of been talking about it a little bit, is how learning is constant, right? You've dropped some names. I mean, you yourself, you're very fluent in dog training. Like, let's be real, like you have over 300,000 subscribers on YouTube. You've had your own TV show on the Animal Planet. Like you're the guy, right? But you still talk about it and you give credit to continuing to learn and being humble, right? So I think when you're talking about like jiu-jitsu and you're talking about dog training, it's very similar in that aspect, right? So I go into an academy and I train. Like, I don't think that just because I've been doing it for 20 years and I'm the black belt and whatever, that I can't learn something from, a white belt, a blue belt, purple belt, brown, whatever the case may be. It happens because things evolve, perspectives change, and just the way your mind works and your level of understanding may be different, and it might help me with a certain technique or something that I'm having issues with. I'm gonna touch real quick. So I have a couple comments. One's Maria says, "Love Cricket's progress." So Cricket is a pup I'm working with, super cute, super smart. Then we got Blanche. She says, "Oh my God, I'm watching this, and Ruger heard your voice, and he's having a fit. He still recognizes it. Awesome." So I love Ruger. Ruger's great. He's a Mao. Him and his family are amazing. They're great. He's doing some really good things. He's working with a trainer right now that has a little more experience and specializes in like tracking and scent detection. So I'm really happy they found something to kind of tap into Ruger's just, I guess, hierarchy of needs, right? Like, and I want to talk about that with you, right? Meeting a dog's needs based off of their breed, right? Because I get calls about stuff, and I'm going to touch base in a second about that. And I also got one guy right here, our buddy from the Philippines, said, "How's your German Shepherd puppy, Nate?" He wants to know about Maverick.
Oh, he's doing great. I actually just did a video with him today. I admittedly, I've been kind of slacking on the obedience. I just moved to Indiana. So during the move and setting up, mostly I've just been focused on exercising them and just kind of spoiling them a little bit. So their setup is in the basement. And in the basement, my dogs have a king size bed, a twin size bed, and a full couch that they get.
So what you just heard is that Harley and Sergio Dog Training are going to move to Indiana and move in with Nate. We're going to live in his basement.
There you go. Boom. But yeah, I did a video with him today. I did a video on adding the verbal command. I don't know if I'm going to be posting it. I'm working with a new videographer, and so he's learning the style that I like, and I think we have to make some adjustments. But overall, today was mostly a test shoot. But yeah, he's great. I mean, Maverick he's a psycho. He's exactly what I wanted. So we were talking about temperament earlier. His temperament is to go, go, go constantly. I could do a full day with him where I take him out on a 45 to an hour nature walk. I can do frisbee, tug, bite work, basic, bite work, obedience, chuck it, a walk, all, and still can keep going.
Awesome. Hey, so I got someone else here, Nate. And guys, real quick, I'm seeing the people that are viewing, the likes, the comments. Oh my God, I appreciate the love and support. Okay, it means a lot to me. I'm very appreciative of that. I know you're just here for Nate, okay, because that's why I'm here. But
I don't know about all that. They like looking at your handsome mug too.
Thanks. All right, so we have Lorena. Okay, Lorena has I'm not going to say the D word. All right, she has a poodle mix. Okay, and her question is, yes, it's a poodle mix. All right, her question is, how can I help my new dog gain some confidence? He's a little shy when he meets new people, hangs back. All right, so she called him the D word, but I call him a poodle mix, and he's 5 months old. His big brother and his big sister are some of my students, Luca and Neeks. And Luca, he's a therapy dog right now. He passed his AKC CGC urban and the regular one, and he does God's work out there.
So we're going to answer this question on confidence.
We are. Hey, I like pumping up Luca. Luca's one of my favorite ones. Okay, he's super handsome and he wears bow ties. All right,
I love it.
Okay, so go for it, Nate. How would you do that?
Okay, so the way that I deal with confidence is to simplify it, it's exposing the dog to different things and pairing it with something the dog likes. So we're creating a positive association. And this is when we think about classical conditioning. Often when people think about classical conditioning or Pavlovian conditioning, they're thinking about the clicker or the bell, the food, and the dog salivates. That's the most simplified form of classical conditioning. But I like, and you and I have talked about this a few times, classical conditioning, the way that I like to define it is the dog's recognition of a pattern outside of their control. So if we have a pattern that we do and the dog recognizes it, the moment they recognize the first element within the sequence is when we see a change of behavior. And it could be a very long sequence. So let's take one that a dog might perceive as something bad, where you can see a change of behavior. And this is from my dog when I was growing up, my family dog. We didn't really take the dog anywhere. I took the dog on walks around the house in the local forest preserve, but that was about it. We never took the dog in the car to go anywhere. So the only time we took the dog into the car was when we were taking the dog to the vet or to a boarding facility because we were going on a family vacation. The moment we got the dog to the car, that was the first element within the sequence that the dog recognized, and she would start panting and shedding, and she would become very anxious and stressed out. So she was classically conditioned in that moment that predicted the sequence, and it created that change of behavior. And when our dogs have this change of behavior, whether it's salivating, getting excited because we grabbed the leash off the wall and the dog now knows that means we're going on a walk, and the dog loves going on the walk, we see that change of behavior. The dog cannot have that reaction. So a dog can't not salivate when they hear the click. The dog can't not get excited. This is outside of their control. And one of the big issues that a lot of people run into is their dogs become classically conditioned to something, and then they're trying to fight through this classically conditioned response, and it's an uphill battle where it's better to change the conditioning. So I'm bringing all this up is because we can do this with things that we want to create positive associations with. So like if I had a dog that was afraid of going into the car because going into the car meant going to the vet, then I have to change that pattern, whatever the first element is. This is why when people talk about separation anxiety, okay, your dog gets really anxious and upset when you leave. Well, what do you do when you leave? What do you do when you leave your dog? What's the sequence? Oh, okay, I put my dog on his bed, I give him a big kiss, and then I grab my backpack and my jacket and my keys. Okay, well, when does your dog start getting anxious? Well, when I grab my keys. Okay, so that's the first signal. So now let's grab your keys and then let's do something the dog likes. Or let's grab the keys and then let's go sit down and relax. Let's uncondition the dog to whatever it was that was creating that unwanted change of behavior. And again, we can do this on the opposite side. So when I'm building a puppy's confidence, I'm constantly exposing that puppy to different things that they can handle while simply pairing it with something pleasant. And it's really that simple. If I have a puppy that loves tug, if tug is a puppy's favorite thing that I'm working with, I can take that puppy in all kinds of environments and just have the tug, bring out the tug. So now I'm creating a strong positive association. Now there could be an issue with that if the dog likes the tug too much. Now we might be creating too much excitement environment. So there's of course a balance. And this is why if we want, let's say, our dogs to be relaxed inside of the living room, we don't play with our dogs in the living room because dogs are very situational. We play with the dogs outside in the backyard. This is where we play. And I know I'm kind of going in a bunch of different directions, but if I'm giving you the most simplified answer possible, new experiences by pairing something pleasant. It's basically the same thing as counter conditioning and desensitization. Counter conditioning is classical conditioning, but the dog is conditioned to something that they perceive as negative. Now, I used to think that it was for fear-induced stimulus that created the unwanted response, but it's just anything the dog doesn't like. So it doesn't have to be fear. So if we have a dog that's classically conditioned to something and they have a bad response, we don't like it, we do counter conditioning, we change what it predicts, and desensitization, where we expose the dog to whatever it is at a low enough threshold till we're not getting that bad reaction. If I have a dog that is afraid of people, let's say, but the dog doesn't react when I'm 20 feet away from somebody, but they do react when I'm 18, well, then I'm going to make sure I'm starting at 20. And then I build the confidence there and I work my way forward. So really, confidence building is the same thing. Is she still on? And does she have a follow-up question?
Okay, so she's still on.
Okay, cool.
That's a lot of information,
It
and
is.
we'll see if she has a follow-up. We have a couple other questions. I do want to add something there, right? So when we're talking about confidence development, my perspective is that we're talking about exposure. Okay, so I'm doing sights, sounds, smells, things of that nature. And just like you said, I'm making sure that there is a positive association. You touched on classical conditioning.
I have something else I want to add before I forget too, if you don't mind.
No, of course, you're the guest.
Control. That's another big part. If a dog doesn't feel like they have any control, the confidence is going to go down quite rapidly. And this is why operant conditioning and being consistent is so important. If we're consistent and we use operant conditioning the right way, so the dog knows I do this, this happens, I do that, that happens. And this is why there's a lot of people that are against traditional style dog training. Whereas traditional style training, we're using force right away from the very beginning. If I'm using force on a dog that hasn't had the opportunity to learn what I'm asking them to do, I'm teaching them through force, that's more stressful. They don't have as much control. The way we do it, where we teach a dog through luring, we teach the positions first, and then we use force and we show the dogs how to turn off that force through complying with behaviors we've already taught them. They're not learning these positions or these behaviors through force. But the operant conditioning, that's why they call it creating a proactive dog, a dog that understands that their behavior has an effect on their environment. And this is the same thing for people. If you have someone who doesn't feel like they're in control of their own life, then they can quickly become depressed. So giving a dog that belief that they're in control, and remember how I defined operant conditioning, a dog's recognition of a pattern within their control, or at least we want them to believe that they're in control. And when we do that and we do it effectively, we get a dog that becomes more and more confident as they understand and as they learn how to navigate within our world.
100%. Obviously. So on this, I agree with you 100%. What I wanted to say about the classical conditioning part, just going back to it, and it might take us off on a segue, but I want us to stay on this because Lorena commented, and then I got another question after that, is that an example is when I put my prong collar on Teddy, he's super happy, he's super excited because he's been conditioned to understand that that prong collar predicts that we're going to work, that we're going to perform some sort of obedience, we're going to perform some sort of training, that he's going to have my undivided attention for X amount of time, and so.
And that's valuable to him.
Exactly, who holds value, right? And so we'll get in that too. People think that value is placed by the person presenting the reward, but really value is from the perspective of the one receiving the reward or the punishment, right? So if that dog perceives something as more valuable, then that's what I should use. But going into what you were talking about.
That's absolutely right too. And also we can do the same thing. I just want to add to that. If we can take something that some people might think as adversive, a prong collar, a shock collar, and we can have a dog become excited about it, we can also do the same thing with things that are inherently good. When I was talking to Bow Wow Bill, which you were on his podcast, we were talking about this same exact concept. And he said in his early career, he made the mistake of only doing jackpots at the end of his training session. And his dogs enjoyed the training session. So once they saw the jackpot, they knew that the training was over and they didn't like the jackpot because of what it predicted. It ended the game. So something that's inherently good, here's a bunch of treats. The dog goes, bummer, because now it's over. Whereas something that could be aversive, or people even argue and say that it's inhumane, the dog gets excited when they see it because it predicts something good.
100%. Yeah. And I'm not going to get on a tangent about what specific dog trainer out there that is very influential that is putting out this kind of stuff, because I'm not going to give them a segue. But 100%, you can make anything we do, right, if used correctly or incorrectly, is going to change the perception of that dog. So for instance, just like you're saying, right, if I use a prong collar and it always predicts good, that's what it's going to predict, right? If I pick up a healing stick and you use that healing stick inappropriately and you use it to do things to your dog that you shouldn't be doing, then they're going to be scared of the healing stick.
Of course, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what it is. The spray bottle. People do the spray bottle all the time, right? The dog doesn't like it. You pick up the spray bottle, dog books it, right? So once again, that's changing what it is and what it means, right? People are like, it's just a spray bottle. Well, to us, it's just a spray bottle. To the dog, it may not necessarily be that. It may be more.
Well, as you said earlier, it's how the dog perceives it.
For
And
sure.
that's incredibly important if we are implementing any sort of positive punishment. And to clarify what positive punishment is, and I just want to clarify this for anyone who's listening who doesn't know between those 4 quadrants, because they can be confusing. So just think positive means adding, negative means taking away. So the positive and the negative happens after the behavior. And then punishment is preventing the repeat of the behavior, whereas reinforcement is encouraging the repeat of the behavior. So dog does a behavior I don't want, I add something the dog doesn't like, or the dog has to perceive it as something that they don't like. And also, when we're talking about using any sort of training style or methodology, if we're talking about pure positive, balance, traditional, alpha dominance. Alpha dominance, in my opinion, is the worst one. We can just throw that in the trash. You can take a really capable and technical dog trainer who is pure positive, and they can have some really great results. But of course, situation matters too. You're not going to be able to use only reward-based training on dogs that are going to be doing police or military work or protection sport and actually winning and being competitive at the top level. But as dog trainers, we also have to just keep in mind, what is it that our clients want? And as you were saying earlier, what is the needs of the dog? What is this particular dog that we're working with? What does this dog need? Not every dog needs to go on a 20-mile run every day like Maverick and play tug and do obedience, or as your dog Teddy. Some dogs just need to hang out by the fireplace, have someone snuggle up next to them, tell them that they're awesome, give them some kisses, give them some treats, and take them on a short little walk. Which also, walks, by the way, this was brought up on the podcast that I was listening to last night, and I thought it was funny because I do the same thing with my dogs, minus the Flexi, but the Flexi is fine too. We often hear people say, dog trainers will say, Flexies are terrible. Those are horrible tools, depending on what you're using them for. But when Michael Ellis and Ivan Balabanov were talking, both of them were laughing because when they take their dogs on walks, they use Flexi leashes, and their dogs run around and smell and pee on things. And then they pointed out,
the point.
Go ahead.
So that's the key point right there, right? Is that the Flexi, right? And when I first started dog training, I thought the Flexi, same thing, right? I was like, oh, like whatever. Just inexperience. The Flexi is amazing for confidence development while maintaining a level of control.
And giving them some freedom.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? So they're out there, they're exploring. I want my dog to explore. I don't want to stop them every time they want to go try something new. At that point, like my dog's just they're not gonna grow, right? It's kind of like not letting your kid fall. Like I need to let my kid fall off the freaking jungle gym. Like that, they need that, right, for all sorts of development. But
yeah, and I did this, and they were talking about it as well on their podcast. But I did a podcast, I think it was like 4 years ago, with the owner of Dog is Good. And she used to be a dog trainer before she started Dog is Good. And she would tell all her clients, we're de-dogging the dog is basically what you want. So think about all the things you don't want your dog to do. I don't want my dog to relieve themselves in the house. I don't want my dog to dig. I don't want my dog to chew up things. These are all things that are inherent within our dog's nature. And that's why when they often talk about doing puppy imprinting, it's like, yeah, we give the puppy certain things that they need. They need to chew on things. It's part of teething. They need to explore. They need to have certain types of exposure so they could be more balanced when they're older. But we're taking things that are natural for dogs and we're saying, no, don't do this anymore. And same thing when we take them on a walk. No, walk next to me, walk half the speed that you normally walk. Like, have you ever walked with a toddler? You're like, let's go. This is so slow. That's what we're doing with our dogs. When we're walking, we think we're walking fast, but our dogs are like, oh my gosh, this is killing me. We are going so slow.
right.
But here's the thing with a lot of dog trainers, that's not the only place in our dog's life in which they have structure. And that is very common with a lot of people. The only time their dog really has structure is when they go out on their structured walk. But if they're trying to let their dog be a dog, and this is something I actually picked up from a mutual friend of ours, Austin, Zero to Hero Dog Training, what he does, and I like this. So it's something that I'm incorporating now. When we teach stays and we think about the 3 Ds, so we got distance, duration, distraction. Well, if we consider heel, loose leash walking, if we consider that a mobile stay, and I'm guilty of this, taking dogs and taking them on first time doing a loose leash walk and expecting them to maintain the position for a good amount of time. Even if it's a 5-minute walk, that's still a long time to hold the position and not releasing them. But then when we do it on a static position, what do we work on first? We work on a little bit of duration. We release the dog, we get them back, a little bit of duration, then maybe some distance. And then finally, we're adding distractions. But we take a dog on a walk and it's like, oh, walk right next to me this whole time until I'm ready to release you. And so what he does with the flexi is he'll call the dog into heel, walk with them for a few paces, and release them using what some trainers call the pre-MAC marker, where you're releasing the dog from the position so they can explore their environment. And we know the definition, doing a less likely behavior to be able to do a more likely behavior. So the dog prefers to run around and sniff and pee on the bushes. Walking next to us is not as fun, but calling him into position, maintaining it for 5, 10, whatever, randomizing the amount of paces, and then releasing them. And a flexi works really great for that.
So real quick, very, very similar to what I recommend for the families I work with. What we do, Nate, is, we'll work on, we'll go on a short walk. Usually, I say about a minute, especially when we're first doing it. And then I release my dog. And when I say release, so, I'll put them in the heel. I'm like, let's go, or walk, or whatever word we've decided that it means to walk. And then, either I'll stop and then I'll say break. And then now at that point, my dog is free to explore. And I do that to differentiate the difference, because there should be a time when the dog is able to, like you said, be a dog. And then there's also a time when, look, dude, I ain't got time for that. We're in here, we're moving. Let's do it. But I do have a question here that I really want to get answered, that someone asked.
Yeah, let's focus on answering all their questions if we can.
For sure. And so this is from Bill. He has a wonderful 10-month-old German Shepherd. He's talking about wanting to stop jumping on new people, even those he knows when they arrive. Now, I want to take a crack at this first, and then I want you to tell me what you think, all right? Because there's a couple different options. All right, so the first thing that I would say is, you can always put the dog on a harness. You set them up to fail. Person comes in, dog jumps, boom, 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 and they don't get the reward. The reward is the affection, right? The attention. So I would stop there. All 4 on the floor, that sort of thing. Then I could get closer. I could mark and get closer to that. That's one approach. Another thing is I can classically condition him that when he hears the knock, for him to go into place.
Mm-hmm.
I have a place for him. I knock, boop, boop, take him to place. Boop, boop, take him to place. Boop, boop, take him to place. And if we have that good stay, we've been working that, then that'll take over. Next time he hears that knock, next time he hears that doorbell, what's he do? He automatically goes, puts himself in place, kind of stops the jumping. So those are kind of 2 different ways. And I didn't get too detailed in it on the details on how I would teach it. But what are your thoughts? Or what would you do differently?
And you're right with the classical condition response, but it's also important to note that a classically conditioned response where we have them do a behavior like that takes much longer than a lot of other classically conditioned responses. So this is something you and I were talking about in great detail, I think about a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that, where when we're first teaching a dog a command, and to clarify why we use markers. So a lot of people use markers, and I ask people all the time. I mean, I recently went to a seminar for Larry Crone had a seminar. Had a great time. It was awesome. Met him. We filmed a podcast episode which I still haven't uploaded. But in some of the breaks, I was just talking to the people that were there. And a lot of times that I talk to people, they don't know why we use markers, or they don't know all the rules behind them. So just to clarify and to simplify it, a marker is a word or sound that predicts any one of the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning. So if I have a sound that predicts positive reinforcement, it's a marker. If I have a sound that predicts positive punishment, it's a marker. And we know the dog's classically conditioned when we see the change of behavior. So in the beginning, when we're working with dogs as trainers, and this goes with anyone who's training a dog, if you're at home and you're training your dog, you're a dog trainer. You may not be a professional dog trainer, but you are a dog trainer. We don't have to put this title on some kind of pedestal. If you're training a dog, you're a dog trainer. So when we're training our dogs, we want to be able to communicate, and we use these markers to help us. There's 3 main reasons I teach all my students. This is why we use our markers. Number 1, to bridge the gap between the behavior and the consequence. We know the closer the consequence is to the behavior, the stronger the connection in the dog's mind. Number 2, to pinpoint fine details. Yep.
Real quick, I want you to touch on consequence. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times people are thinking consequence, they think bad.
Bad. Yeah. Yeah. Consequence, good or bad. It's just the consequence to the action. So the dog does something, maybe they get a treat. That's a consequence. Maybe they get to play tug. That's a consequence. Maybe they have to go back into the stay, or they get a correction. So yeah, that's how I like to define it as well. It's a consequence to the action. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. So number 1 is, again, bridging the gap between the behavior and the consequence. Number 2 is to pinpoint fine details within our training. So if I'm working on a focused heel and I want the dog to look up at me, it's much easier for the dog to look and then to mark that behavior and follow it up with the reward. And when I say mark, that's when we use the sound, yes, or free, or click, whatever. That's the mark. So if someone says mark the behavior, that's what we're talking about. And then the last one is to release and reward simultaneously. So I can, if I'm doing the implied stay, which that's the type of stay that I like to do. Some people use the verbal, whichever works best for you is fine. If I tell a dog down, they're in a down stay. If I'm using a termination marker, a terminal marker, I can release and reward them right away. So if I'm not trying to pinpoint a fine detail within my training, if I don't have to bridge the gap between the behavior and the consequence, and I don't have to release the dog, I don't need a marker. If I'm doing basic foundational luring with a dog, not even adding commands, I'm luring into the sit, the down, the stand, heel, I can just give the treat once the dog gets into the position. So that's where we're talking about markers. Now, we use the markers with the operant conditioning. Dog does a behavior, they get a reward. So initially when we're teaching commands, it is through operant conditioning, but on a long enough timeline, these commands can become classically conditioned responses. And when they're classically, this is what I used to always say, dogs are creatures of habit. If you do obedience with your dog every day, from my experience, around 6 to 9 months, if you're very, very consistent, you'll have a dog that responds automatically. The type of dog that if you record your voice saying sit down and you play it on the TV, your dog will be like, huh? And your dog will sit and lay down. The response becomes a classically conditioned response. And this is how some of the best trainers in the world win at the highest level. They train their dogs so much and so consistently that the behaviors have become classically conditioned responses. So now when I'm looking at behavioral issues, to go to the situation that we're talking about, the dog jumping up, very, very common. This is what I would categorize as an opportunity for what I like to call teachable moment. So for me, teachable moments fall under stays and boundaries. Now, this is also self-reinforcing behavior. So if we're thinking about intrinsic and extrinsic behaviors, well, let's define that really quickly. Extrinsic is operant conditioning. I do this to get the treat. I do this to avoid punishment. So I'm being influenced by external factors. And the intrinsic is I play video games because it feels good. You don't have to pay me to play video games, or you don't have to pay a dog to chase a ball, or you don't have to pay. I don't have to take a dog and send them to go bite the decoy. And then after they bite the decoy, go, good job, here's your treat. No, biting the decoy is the reward. So that's going to be the intrinsic behaviors. Self-reinforcing. So any self-reinforcing behavior, I look at it this way. We can either prevent, redirect, or correct. Whatever self-reinforcing behavior it is. So with this one, my option is to redirect initially in the very beginning. I'm not going to prevent. Preventing is, some people will do preventing techniques where they might have I've seen this before, where there will be a hook on the ground and you have the leash attached to the dog and you have it go under the hook and you hold the leash. And then you have people come up and if the dog tries to jump, you just prevent them by using the leash. The dog can't jump up. That's prevention. And that can actually work very well if you do it enough to where the dog starts to think, well, jumping, I can't even jump up. There's no way, it doesn't work.
It's like the baby elephant, right?
Yeah, that learned helplessness, right? But that's not as much, I don't think, as learned helplessness,
Well,
but
not to that extreme, but it's the same
not to the
concept.
extreme. Yeah. So the dog, they tried it, doesn't work. I'm going to stop trying. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Or
I
some
like
people
hearing
will
that.
just step, or some people will step on the leash. That's another way. What I do is, if I'm working on preventing a dog from jumping up, it also depends on the dog. If you have a really overly excited dog, you might have to take additional steps, like what you were saying, change some of the conditioning. If it's like most dogs, they get a little happy, a little body wagging. Then what I do is I tell the person who's going to meet the dog, and I do this with a bunch of people before I have random people do it. So let's say you come over to the house, Sergio. I go, okay, I'm working on teaching Maverick not to jump up on people. He likes to jump up. Okay, so you can pet him, but if he jumps up, stop petting him. So number one, negative punishment. We're going to remove the reward. Once you stop petting him, I'm going to make sure all four paws are back on the ground. This is where I would use my marker wrong. The word wrong for me predicts negative reinforcement. That's the trigger or the signal for my teachable moment, which also falls under what I call a reinforcement event. So reinforcement event for me is anytime we're trying to get our dog to perform an action. So in this situation, dog jumps up, wrong. What do I want the dog to do? I want the dog to come back down. And so I can do that by applying leash pressure. Or if I have the dog conditioned to a tone, I can use the tone on the remote collar. Once the dog's back, all four paws are on the ground, pressure is turned off. Remember, negative happens after the behavior. So pressure is turned off, and then the human, you, my helper, can go back to petting. And we do that every time. So then the dog goes, oh, if I want attention, if I want to be pet, then I keep all four paws on the ground. And that works out really well if everybody's timing is good. But some dogs will continue to jump up. And if I have a dog that continues to jump up, this is where I transition into a punishment event or correction event. So
real quick,
go ahead.
sorry to cut you off, kind of.
No, I know I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I love it. I love it. It's good. It's good. All these people have heard me say some very similar things, maybe not that detail. So I want to touch on two things. One, when I use wrong and what I teach wrong, wrong is stop what you were doing, go back to what you were doing. That's like how I explain it to the family.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Right. And then one thing I want to touch on is we need to understand real quick reinforcement and punishment when it comes to operant conditioning. Reinforcement, in its most basic term, is increasing the likelihood that a behavior is going to happen again. Punishment is decreasing the likelihood of a behavior happening again.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to touch on that real quick for those of you that are watching as Nate starts talking about, applying various or different types of punishment, right? And understand this, that he's talking about punishment in the form of or in the context of operant conditioning. Okay?
Yeah, and I use the terminology. I mean, there's trainers out there where they don't like using the scientific terminology or people are sensitive to it. I think it's important because if somebody's explaining something to me, and this has happened with other trainers that I was speaking with on the phone or mentoring through Zoom calls, where they'll start explaining something to me and I go, oh, you're talking about BAT. That's behavioral adjustment training. Like all these things, not everything. I mean, people can come up with new things, certainly. But a lot of times they're saying things that already exist. So when we learn all the terminology, it helps us input it into our system and it simplifies the whole process. Like when I talk about dog training, it sounds overwhelming. This is a lot of information, a lot of data overload. It happens quite a bit. And of course, if we're thinking about Bloom's taxonomy and how the brain learns, right? We get the information, we start to apply it, then we get comprehension. It takes a while before we get to that, oh, aha, this all makes sense. And that's why I'm constantly trying to simplify it. But if I have a system that most people can understand, so if we're looking at the teachable moments, again, I do the same thing for stays, any kind of boundary. I say wrong, and I'm using negative reinforcement. It has to be negative reinforcement, not any form of positive reinforcement. I won't even do a lure, meaning let's look at a dog jumping on the sofa. And let's say we don't want the dog on the sofa. And again, this is all personal preference. I've heard people have said to me, like, because I tell them, like, my dogs have their own beds, they have their own sofas, they're allowed. And they're like, yeah, well, yeah, but you're a dog trainer. Other people can't do this. It's like, yeah, I did it before I was a dog trainer. I never had any issues. And Bethany Perdome, great dog trainer, she says it's not a problem until it's a problem. And that's absolutely right. If I have a super friendly, happy-go-lucky golden retriever or Labrador, or even Dobermans are basically golden retrievers now in Doberman's body. If I have a really happy-go-lucky dog, the odds of it resource guarding the sofa is pretty low. And it's not going to suddenly think that it's the alpha, which again, the way that that's defined, which is really good, is priority access to limited or valuable resources. And when people have dogs that have aggression issues, 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, the aggression is caused by the human. They're like, my dog's human aggressive. It's like, your dog aggressive. That's why your dog is human aggressive, because you are aggressive to your dog. So when we are using, and this is why another example that I love to relate to jujitsu, if you and I are sparring, if you're preparing me for a competition, I have a competition coming up in 3 weeks, and we're sparring every single day, there is no way you can get me to competition ready level without implementing positive punishment on me during training. If you put me in an armbar, leg lock, that's all positive punishment.
Hold on, real quick. So real quick, what is that though? Stress. Okay.
It is a form of stress.
If you, doesn't matter what skill it is, all right? Jiu-jitsu, pickleball is the new thing, freaking whatever the case. If there's not a level of stress placed on you, you are not going to develop. It's just not going to happen. Like, you know what? We all want to be told, like, oh yeah, you know, you're great, you're awesome. Like, no, like I hear constantly from you and from other friends of mine, like Jean-Luc's great at it. Jean-Luc's great at telling me how much I suck. And I honestly, I truly appreciate it, because y'all are telling me from a want for me to progress and develop. Right. So, same thing with our dogs. With our dogs, like, you know, there has to be a level of stress placed on the dog. Now it's our job as the owner, to be an advocate for our dog, but the owner and the dog trainer to really understand the dog and apply the appropriate amount of stress, where we're not breaking the dog, where we're not like shutting the dog down, but there is a level of stress that should be placed on them for them to continue to develop.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on that because recently I've had situations where I've had families that I work with, and they think that there should be like almost no stress on the dog, and I'm in disagreements.
Is that your phone or mine dinging?
Oh, that's my computer.
Yeah, well, there's been plenty of research on it that if a dog doesn't experience any sort of strategically implemented stress, then it's much harder for them to cope with any real stress that is inevitable in life.
Mm-hmm.
We all experience stress. So by doing it in a way that is strategic, we are doing the dog a much greater service than trying to avoid it. But there is, of course, a way to do it strategically. And one of my coaches used to always say, I'm sure he still says it, is get comfortable in an uncomfortable position. But the thing is, too, if you and I are sparring and you are putting me in submission positions, what is that doing for me? It's preventing me, like, okay, don't extend my arm again and expose it. I mean, sure, I could do that to a white belt and they might not catch it. But once I do it to somebody with some skill, I'm going to get armbarred. And I have to have that presented to me, or else I don't know how to properly defend. And I handle it just fine. After the armbar, okay, I do the tap, we slap hands, we hit fist, and we go back into sparring. I'm not mad at you. You're not mad at me. But if I came in and you started yelling at me and you did a double leg takedown and you threw me in that armbar in absolute rage, totally different experience. So more, it's not like people are often worried about, I don't want to damage the relationship. I don't want my dog to experience something bad. It's like, as long as you don't make anything personal, you're not going to damage your dog. Even if I've accidentally corrected dogs on the highest level on a remote collar, it's happened to me. I didn't realize the collar was at the highest level. I correct the dog yelps, and I'm like, oh, hey, oops, hey, didn't mean to do that. But the dog's fine. Go ahead.
So, talking about that, you just agreeing, right? And it's this. I don't, some people are under the idea that they're like, I want my dog to know I'm mad at them.
Mm-mm.
Why? Why? Doesn't matter. Listen, these are the rules, these are the boundaries, these are the expectations. I've taught you that these are them. You have proved, right, that you can perform this. And when you don't perform, this is what happens, right?
And that's the opera conditioning.
100%, right?
That's what it's
So
all about.
very, very clear lines, like just like us, right? I speed. A police officer sees me, I get a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mad at the cop for pulling me over. It is what it is. You know what I mean? You try and roll with me, I submit you. It just is what it is.
Absolutely right. And that is right though. I love the saying that Tom Rose taught me, which is the only thing two dog trainers can agree on is that the third trainer is wrong. And I think a lot of this,
there's a lot of that around here. Let me tell you.
This whole thing where I want the dog to know that I'm upset. I think this is a byproduct of the alpha dominance theory. I don't think it's necessary when we look at these quadrants and we consider how they function. So negative reinforcement, let's break that down. We have the two different perspectives. We have the dog trainer's intention and we have the dog's perception. And so with negative reinforcement, there's only one correct answer. There's multiple wrong answers, but there's one correct answer. And this is why when we're first teaching negative reinforcement, we give the dog the answer. That reduces the stress. If you take someone who's been in a cave their entire life and they come out and you get them in a car and they don't buckle the seatbelt and it starts beeping and they're like, what is this beeping noise? And you sit there and you're like, figure it out. That might actually become stressful. It might certainly become irritating.
It stresses me the hell out. when people are in the car with me and they don't put their seatbelt on time, I'm like, dude, what's going on?
I'm the same way.
Like, stop.
But if you say buckle your seatbelt, okay, because again, there's only one right answer. That beeping's not going to go off if they hit the front, if they yell, they can only buckle the seatbelt. So what is the trainer's intention? To get a specific behavior. What is the dog's perception? Now, with negative reinforcement, intention matters more than perception. Because I could even do leash pops, which I don't like doing this, but some trainers, when they're using negative reinforcement, they'll do a bunch of little leash pops. So let's think of a dog. So if this is a dog and I have the leash on and I'm trying to get the dog to sit, I can lift up, apply pressure, dog sits, right? Some people do is they'll do pop, 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 dog sits, and they stop popping. It's not hard pops. It's light pops, and it's acting in the same manner. It's like using a tone and going e instead of a continuous. But the way that I like to look at it is if the dog perceives it as a punishment, if I'm using negative reinforcement and the dog that I'm training perceives it as punishment, they don't like it, it's aversive, then I need to back it up a little bit and reduce the intensity of the negative reinforcement in which I'm implementing. Because I don't want the dog to perceive it as punishment because negative reinforcement is not supposed to be a punishment. But with punishment, we have our intention and the dog's perception. Our intentions could be to punish the dog. But if the dog doesn't perceive it as a punishment, then it's not a punishment. If I take using, let's say, your water bottle example earlier, there are plenty of dogs, if you spray them with the water bottle, they'll bite at the water. It has in fact, they might even see it as positive reinforcement. You stop, that's how Ari is. You spray water at her, she bites it. And so with positive punishment, perception is important. So if I'm using positive punishment, and when we think about motivation, a dog's motivation not to receive the punishment must override the motivation to do the unwanted behavior. And this is when we're thinking about intrinsic behaviors. The dog wants to chase the squirrel. The dog wants to dig. Well, the motivation not to receive the correction has to override. So either the dog has to believe that if I do this, I'm going to get a correction and I don't like the correction, so I'm going to avoid the behavior, or it's not possible for me to do this. I've tried it a dozen times and every single time I've been stopped. Now, there's a few times you want to jump in and I just kept talking. So I hope you remember what you were going to add.
Probably not, but I am going to transition just a little bit. Okay.
Oh, is there another question?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
And one, I'll tell you right now, Nate, I absolutely love our conversations. Okay, they're really good, and all the information that's being presented. All right, although it's being presented towards one specific question, it can be applied if you really listen to it. It can be applied to multiple scenarios,
Mhm.
multiple situations, and things of that nature. Now, I will say this, and I after this, I'm going to move on to this next question. Is you were talking about perception of whether it is negative reinforcement or if it's positive punishment. I'm going to give you a great example. All right. I got interviewed about a border patrol agent kneeing their working dog. Right. And while I was getting interviewed, Teddy did something. I think he like jumped up towards me. He like went up and I said wrong. Right. Which for me, just like you, because you taught me a lot of this stuff, is predicts what? Negative reinforcement. But in the tone I said it, you see the change in behavior. At that moment in time, unfortunately, he perceived that as punishment.
Because you went wrong.
Yep, his ears went back, he
Mhm.
got small, just things like that. And I felt really bad, you
We're
know,
humans, though. Our emotions, we want to try our best not to, though. But yeah.
100%. But the reason why I bring it up though is because I really want people to get this across is that it is the perception of the dog. I have a video on YouTube. Here's a shameless plug. Make sure you watch it. Talk about the 3 reasons why a dog doesn't listen during training. And the 3 things I say is 1, you're boring, right? 2, you're predictable, right? And 3 is your reward sucks, right? So, and I bring it up because that reward sucking, the human thinks, oh, this is a great reward. He should be
Mhm.
happy with this. And the dog's like, dude, this is using the language the kids use now. This is mid, and like they don't. That's not it.
Yeah, and of course, and that's the same. Yeah, exactly right. With punishment and with reward, it's how the dog perceives it, not what
100%.
we necessarily think. And the thing with we definitely have to touch on real quick with the being predictable. Like we want to be predictable with some things, but then other things we don't. And so there is some nuance in that for sure.
So when I talk about predictability in that aspect, I'm talking about like sit, yes,
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
yes, sit, yes,
Exactly. Yep. That's what I was referring to as
yeah,
well. So it's
yeah.
like,
The
yeah, we
dog
want to be predictable with the way that we respond, the way that we implement operant conditioning so the dogs
their
understand.
communication.
But yeah, we don't want the training session to be exactly the same every time. We don't want to not randomize and change the rewards to keep the dog interested. So yeah, or some of the other I mean, you train enough dogs, you're going to pattern train even if you don't mean to. It's like one of the things that I do, I still do it when I train dogs, like other people's dogs, not mine, is I have a tendency when I'm walking them, I'll stop, I'll do the automatic sit, and then I'll tell them down, and I turn and step in front of them. And I do it so much that if I put them in a sit and I turn to step in front of them, even if I don't tell them down, they lay down. They go, oh, and they go to lay down. And the second I see that, I go, I pattern train that too much. And that's the funny thing too about the automatic sit when halted. When I first learned that, I was taught like you have to take the last step, you have to simultaneously, like it was so ridiculous. And then once I understood how dogs learn, I was like, oh, I can just stop and tell the dog to sit. And then after enough repetitions, the dog's going to go, every time we stop, you tell me to sit. So I'm just going to sit.
Yeah, it's a space.
And that, of course, that could be a double-edged sword too, because then you're trying to work the recall and you put the dog in the stay and you step back and you call the dog to you and you do that over and over again. You put the dog in the stay and you know this, right? And you walk away and the dog goes, oh, you're going to call me. And they
Right,
break the position before you release them. And then people get mad. No, I didn't want you to break. It's the dog's like, you taught me to break.
for sure. So I'm going to go into this next question, and I don't want us to dive too deep into it, if possible, because I have 2 other really good questions following it.
Okay,
But
we'll try to make them quick.
yeah, so someone asked, and I'm going to use the terms that they use. Okay, it's not the term I would specifically use. All right. So this particular person, his name is John. He has a Kanye Corso, and he says, "Is a shock collar bad for a dog?"
No.
Now, you okay? All right. Look, Yes. All right. There we go. I guess that's as short as it could get.
Yeah,
So,
that is as short as it. You want me to elaborate for a minute?
yeah, or I can real quick and then tell me what you think about my answers, and I'll do a little bit of learning and growth for myself,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
we'll kind of see what's up. So my answer to that would be that any tool could be bad for a dog when used inappropriately. So there are three things when I talk about working with an e-collar specifically, and these are my personal preferences based off of my experience, the stuff I've seen, the stuff I've read, and other dog trainers and things like that. So one is I make sure that my dog's behavior has been proofed, right? And what I mean by that is like they can consistently perform the task that's being required or asked of them, right, in a particular level of environment. Okay, I don't want to get too much into like the different environmental um, levels, but essentially, like my dog understands sit means sit, understands down means down, come means come, things like
In
that,
multiple environments.
right? In multiple environments, and
Okay, yeah.
they can provide that to me, right? They can provide it to me, and they can offer me that behavior when asked. They've been operantly conditioned to understand that. Once they can do that, then what I like to do is I'll take the e-collar and I'll put it on my family, on the client that's going to use it. And I'll have them test it on themselves, very similar to in the Marine Corps. For me to use OC, I had to be OC sprayed. For me to use a taser, you got to get tased. I use that same perspective. So I'll do that. And then I make sure that my dog and my handler is trained on the e-collar. So it's a little bit different training, right? So depending on how we're going to use the e-collar, because there's a lot of different ways now. Um, the dog understands that where the e-collar stem is coming from and how it's going. You can do that by overlapping. You can do that by, layering. You can do it by putting one before the other, however the case may be. But they understand, and usually people will associate it with either negative reinforcement or positive punishment, right? Depending on what's going on. I'm talking in generalities at this point. And then
And you're talking about avoiding superstitious associations.
yes, yes. And the handler has to understand how to do that and how to do it with correct timing. So if you're able to do all that and you understand those nuances and you know how to appropriately use the right level, it can be a wonderful tool. I mean, it could be absolutely amazing. It can be used to learn new behaviors, shape a lot of confidence in your dog, trying new things, and it can increase their overall quality of life by giving them freedom that they wouldn't be able to experience unless you're walking around with, you custom make 1,000-foot leash or something crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. It's all good stuff. Some of the things that I like to cover is common fears that people have. People that are asking about remote training collars, a lot of times they're very curious. They want to use them. They see the benefits, they see the value, but at the same time, they see the possible downfalls or the mistakes that they may make or the issues that they could create by using it the wrong way. Now, this can happen for certain things, and I'll give you a couple examples. This happens with dogs that are not properly trained on what they call the invisible fence. And I also don't like that remote training collars are called shock collars and they're called electric collars because it's not electric and it's not shock. It's a muscle stimulator. When people think electric, then they're like, can you use it in the water? It's like, yeah, because it's not. If it was electric, you couldn't use it in the water. It's a muscle stimulator. So, anyways, if they're using the invisible fence, they put the flags out, but they don't properly teach the dog the boundaries, and the stim level is too high for the dog and it doesn't have the warning. What has happened to some dogs is they're too afraid to even go into the yard. They go, I'm not going to go into the yard. There's landmines out there. I don't know where they are. Or if we do correct continuously and we correct too high, most compassionate people that care about their dogs are not going to make these mistakes. And one of the easiest way to do it, to bounce off a lot of the stuff that you said, What I like to do, I agree. I make all my clients use the remote collar on themselves. I want them to feel it. But before I have people work the remote collars, I want to make sure that their timing is pretty decent using reward-based training. So are they good at timing their markers? Are they good at separating the mark from the delivery of the reward? Are they good at keeping the dog engaged with them? If they can hit these bullet points, then that increases my confidence in them to be able to do it the right way with the remote training collar. And then I also think it's very helpful if people start with the remote training collar as negative reinforcement. You're less likely to make any sort of long lasting mistakes by using it as negative reinforcement. Now, if you're using a collar that doesn't offer the tone, you can do low level stim. A lot of people do that. That's how Larry Crone teaches people. He uses the low level stim. It's all based on negative reinforcement. So the dogs feel the stim, they comply to the behavior, the stim goes away. It's not high enough that the dog perceives it as painful, but it's enough that the dog goes, I don't like it. I want to remove that. Same thing as leash pressure. I don't like that pressure. I'm going to turn it off. I prefer to use the tone. And I think the tone is much easier for most people to use. And if we know, so like a really easy way using the flexi leash, like we were talking about earlier, and this is how a lot of people will teach, or a long line, a lot of people will teach the low level stim. You have your dog on the flexi lead, the dog's running around, you press the tone, dog hears it, you cue the dog with the leash, dog turns, you release the tone, yay! You do this over and over again until eventually you press the tone, dog comes running. Great, now the dog's responding to the tone. And that's a form of negative reinforcement. And if you want to do what I do, is I pretty much just started using it. Now, as you were talking about with the superstitious associations, if we have a systematic approach, which this is how I do everything, and I think that's a big part of that has to do with our military training. I like systems. I like knowing step 1, step 2, step 3. And then some people might say, well, that's cookie cutter. I do my training according to the dog in front of me. I use science and I adjust each step according to the dog. I may have what we were talking, again, perception. If the reward event is part of my system, it doesn't mean that the reward event is the same for every single dog. I'm going to adjust the reward event for the dog that I'm working with. I'm going to adjust the correction event for the dog that I'm working with. I'm going to adjust how long I work with a dog based on that dog's attention span and how much focus I get. So I'm going to adjust consistently throughout, but the science pretty much remains the same. And so the process that I follow after they are at a point where they feel pretty confident with the negative reinforcement, then I'll start doing the positive punishment. And for me, I start by correcting dangerous and destructive behaviors. And of course, if it's dangerous and destructive. So one dog could be doing something that's not dangerous or destructive, and another dog could do the same exact thing, and that dog, it is dangerous or destructive. And I'll give you an example. If I have an older dog and that older dog goes to chew on an electrical cord, I'm going to correct him right away. And it's going to be a pretty high correction because I don't want him to chew on that cord. If a puppy does it, I'm just going to stop him because the puppy, like Maverick did that. When I first had Maverick around my computer, he tried biting every cord and I just stopped him. And now he doesn't do that anymore. But it wasn't dangerous for him because the likelihood of him getting through the cord was very low. Whereas a full-size adult dog, I mean, if you ever turned your back for a few minutes on a dog that you had on a back tie, if you're not paying attention, that dog will chew right through that leash. And then they'll come running over to you with the leash hanging off with a big smile on their face. But yeah, I don't want to go into, I can keep going for a while.
I'm gonna go into this next question. So right here, this is Marina. Marina, man, you know what? She's pretty good. She's pretty good at dog training.
And if we're talking about plugs, I do have my remote collar video on my channel. And that's specifically on using it as positive punishment, not negative reinforcement.
Right.
But anyways, Maria.
So I have mine as well, and mine is for positive punishment as well.
Oh, okay. Watch them both.
Watch them both. All right. But mine's really old, and I've learned so much more since I made that. And I'm actually going to be doing one soon where I talk about using the stem and using it as a negative reinforcement vice, just using it as positive punishment.
Yeah. And if you have the tone, I would definitely recommend the tone. Oh my gosh. The tone. In fact, I had a client message me literally today, let me tell you what he said.
Tell me about it, big dog.
He put, Nate, this e-collar is incredible. The tone is such an effective way to communicate. He's suddenly walking beautifully next to me now, and we can suddenly pass dogs on the other side of the street without fuss. He'll need some time and some practice, but we can actually stand a chance now. I can see a path forward. We passed 5 dogs with no reaction, no barking, no hackles. I am having a little trouble getting the e-collar to connect. So then he had a question. And so the question that he had was, because he has a German Shepherd, the connectors weren't getting through. So I recommended the wings.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these tools, and I've had other clients do that. I had this one client, he always cracked me up. And I showed up to a lesson and he looks at me, he goes, and he's looking at the remote collar on his hip. He's like, Nate, I love this thing. How did I ever exist without it before? And he kept like looking down and back at me with wide eyes. It was hilarious. But anyways, next question. I'm sorry.
Next question. Here we go. I know, Nate.
ADHD.
I love it. So Marina, right? She's a good dog trainer. She trains dogs. She doesn't do it professionally. When I say professionally, that means paid.
Yeah.
But she does a really great job with her dogs. All right. She says, I have 2 questions. What are some good ways to work a high energy dog to help burn energy without making them so tired to where their anxiety goes through the roof from being too tired? If that makes sense. Example, Lonnie's amazing, by the way. Lonnie and I can do an hour of dock diving or training, and that tires her out well. Riot, I do an hour of either, and he's extremely tired. He starts to get super whiny and will nip at the others from being so tired. But of course, if I do nothing with him, the anxiety and energy is super high.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
That's right there.
Yeah, I see it. I don't have a direct answer for that. I mean, that's something where I would have to see the dogs to see how that one dog is reacting. That might be something that I try to influence through obedience. But I think it could be the same as humans. For example, if we're doing a fitness program and we're doing it for a certain amount of time, we have to switch it up so we can constantly trick and confuse the body so we can continue to grow and maximize the effort that we put in. And I think by changing different things that we do with our dogs, it could potentially have the same impact. So I'll give you an example. I do chuck it with my dogs all the time. And it's at a point now where I can just do, unless it's hot outside, I can do chuck it for hours and they'll just keep going. They've built up a very strong endurance specifically for that activity. But if I start randomizing it, if I start bringing out the Frisbee and I start doing some tug and I incorporate some obedience, by doing these other things, we can tire them out. Now, with your dog getting too tired, again, I would probably incorporate some obedience, but I can't say that for certain either, because we were talking about before with the classically conditioned response. So my dog Maverick, he has a few classically conditioned responses that are outside of his control where he gets really, really excited. He's a very, very happy, very easily excitable young boy. And when he gets excited like that, he vocalizes his excitement. When he's doing that, there's really not much I can do. If I try to correct it, he vocalizes it more. And so the best thing is to, if I really want to fix it, it's to uncondition him to the response, which I tried doing it with the remote collar. It worked because I conditioned him to the remote collar. He got really crazy and excited. And then I fixed it, but then I brought it back again. And I'm like, it's like, whatever. Because when I bring out the collars, he gets really excited. And so I say that because if she's dealing with a classically conditioned response, that's going to be very difficult to work through. So I would try stopping at different points. I would try incorporating obedience. I would problem solve. This is something that would take multiple different attempts to figure out what's going to work best. And this is why we have multiple techniques, multiple strategies, because one won't necessarily work on every single dog. And so we adjust accordingly.
One thing I want to touch on that you mentioned here, Nate, is expectation management, right? Expectation management. Guys, and this is my opinion, Nate. After I say what I got to say, let me know what your thoughts are. Look, so for instance, I offer 6 in-home private lessons. and I usually recommend 6 group lessons depending on what the situation is. The reality is, some people will say, "Oh yeah, that's all you need," or some of these, super duper dog trainers will be like, "Oh, I can fix anything in 1 lesson." No, you can't. Sorry, buddy. You're not going to have the reliability. You're
You
not
can suppress things pretty quickly.
for sure, for sure. You can suppress it,
Yeah.
but overall reliability is not going to
Mhm.
be there. It's going to resurface. Um, when we're talking about fixing, right? We use the term fixing these dogs' behaviors and things like that. What I like to try and remind people is a couple things, right? Is one, if it's something where it's like a true behavior modification that needs to be done, something that's been classically conditioned, where they're doing something, for instance, um, doorbell rings, dog barks, doorbell rings, dog barks. Well, at one point that was an um, operantly conditioned, then it eventually become classically conditioned for them to bark when the doorbell rang, right? And I can get into detail about that later, but you understand what I'm saying, Nate. Now, if I go see some sort of medical professional for anxiety, PTSD, depression, whatever the case may be, whatever the DSM outlines, I'm not getting fixed in 6 lessons. So I don't understand why people think their dog is going to be fixed in 6 lessons or 8 lessons or 10 lessons, right? It's about learning how to manage the behaviors, how to deal with them, and then how to address them on a daily basis as they present themselves in order to reduce the likelihood of those unwanted behaviors happening again in the future. Same thing with behaviors I want to see, right? Right now, Teddy and I were preparing for Ring One. Had to throw a little plug in for Teddy. So we're preparing for Ring One, and there are some things that I want to increase the likelihood of him doing. But just because I get him to do it one time doesn't mean he knows how to do it. We'll take it back to jujitsu, right? So everyone goes to jujitsu. You go to a trial class, they teach you an armbar, and everyone's like, "Oh, I know how to do an armbar." I'm like, "Cool. Then you should be able to armbar everyone in this room if you knew how to do it." But the reality is, you don't know how to do it, because if you did, then you could do it to everyone, right? That's the way I look at things, right? That's why, like, when I go and I train and people are like, "Oh, they're showing the cross choke again." I already know that. I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, what's your submission rate with the cross choke? It should be
Mhm.
pretty high. And if it's not, then you obviously don't understand the mechanics thoroughly enough to apply it successfully. So the same thing, right? So when we're talking about dogs and decreasing unwanted behavior, we need to understand that it takes time. When I'm talking about dogs and I'm talking about increasing the likelihood that they perform a certain task or a behavior, or they're able to do that reliably in different environments, that takes time. What are your overall thoughts on that sort of stuff?
Well, you made me think of a few things as you were talking. So, not directly to what you're saying, but in line with it. So, one thing is, I don't recall what it was that you said, but having an outlet. No, no, so what
What you
triggered this thought, right? What triggered this thought. So, having an outlet, meaning this dog that's getting really excited in the situation and is redirecting. I had a dog that I was working with that it needed to bite. It was in its DNA. It had to bite. And when you let it out of the crate, it came out biting right
Mhm.
away. And it wasn't aggressive. It just biting was just in its nature. It was a Malinois. And so
It's almost
in
like
this,
they're bred to do that.
right. And in this situation,
Crazy.
um, because at the time it wasn't biting, like I could control the dog, it was fine, but my girlfriend at the time was helping me, and she sent me
Who
a
was that?
photo.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
She sent me a photo, and she had bite marks all over her arm, like bruises and stuff. And I said, next time you let him out when I'm not there, just have a tug toy. And so that's what she did. She opened it, had a tug toy, he bit the tug toy, and off he went. And it makes me think about this as well with the more we think about our past, we can start to connect things to our current situation. And raising kids, I'm constantly thinking about things that I did when I was younger and stupid things that I did that I don't want them to do. And if we think about these things, well, what was the underlying reason? Let's say I was driving a car really fast, which I did that once on the highway, 140 miles an hour, insanely stupid. Like the smallest thing could get you killed.
Were you a Lance Corporal?
No, I wasn't in the military at the time.
Oh.
This was before that. But why was I doing that? Was it the adrenaline rush? What was the underlying emotion or feeling or sensation that I needed? And could that have been satisfied in some other context? Something better, competing in a martial arts, playing in a sport, something that could fulfill that need. And sometimes we could think about the same thing with our dogs. What's happening, Bill? I actually mentioned you earlier. Uh, so we can actually consider that with our dogs. If our dogs have certain needs that we can meet through these situations and incorporating it in, it could help with that issue. I don't remember exactly what her question was, but I think she said something about the dog would get too tired and then would redirect that negative energy and like nip at other dogs or something. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Let's see. Super whiny and will nip at others being tired. So that's something I might even think, and this could sound like management, but giving the dog an outlet. Like you're done, you're tired. Here's a Kong toy. Here's a work to eat feeder. Don't put food in it because he's tired, but give him something to satisfy that need to bite and to chew, some sort of toy that he could chew on. I have these really great rough dog toys that I use. They're indestructible. And my dogs have them all over the place, and it gives them that additional satisfaction. So he might just need some sort of outlet that could help. And then something else that I thought about was, so should I do training with my wife and kids or just me and our dog? The more people in the family that are training and are on the same page, the better. But something else I want to think about, and there's science behind this, think about something else I want to talk about. There's science behind this that, and you know this if you've competed, and I know you've competed in martial arts. Anytime we're in a stressful situation and our body's dealing with adrenaline and cortisol, it decreases our ability for our brain to recall information. That's why, I mean, I've competed a handful of times, and every time I'm like, I'm way better than this. Why am I in a position and I don't know what to do right now, but I know what to do. And so we have to.
What did he just say? Yeah. No,
Yeah, you
sure.
know what I mean.
I
And
do know.
anyone who's been in a stressful situation, it's like your brain has a dump. And this is something that I think about when I'm working with my dogs too. If our dogs are in a situation that might be stressful for them, if they're overly tired or if we're expecting too much without enough proper training in that specific environment, we have to give the dog the benefit of the doubt. Like once I correct a dog, for example, if I tell a dog down and I know the dog knows down, they've proven 80% proficiency or better in that environment. I say down and the dog's like, I'm not doing that. And I say no, and I give the dog a correction. After I give the dog the correction, I'm going to assume that the dog is slightly stressed from that correction. And now when I recommand down, if the dog doesn't know the response or is acting like they don't know the response, I'm simply going to give them the answer. I'm going to assume that under this current level of stress, the dog has forgotten that information momentarily, and I'm going to provide it for them, giving them that benefit of the doubt. So we can think about that as well. If our dogs are really tired, really exhausted, they may not be thinking as clearly. So keeping those things in mind could help a little bit when dealing with certain conflicts. I hope that helps Maria out.
Marina. But yeah,
Marina,
absolutely.
sorry.
That's okay. I think it does. It helped me out. Like, because I'm recording this because I'm gonna go back and watch it. But hey, one thing I do want to touch on, okay, that we're talking about is, you mentioned that, predictability, right? We give the command, dog offers the behavior, the dog learns that this is what the behavior is, right? And so anytime we add anything different, it changes the equation for a dog, right? So that's why generalization, right? So that's why it's different for a dog to do sit down, come in my living room, and for him to do it outside, right?
Yes.
Initially, right? That's why it's different. So this past weekend at the trial, okay, once again, Teddy did great. A lot of the points we lost were all handler error. It was me. right? I kind of let the team down with some of the stuff, things I should have known that I didn't know. But either way, oh, he hears my voice. Um, here we go.
It's not too bad. I wouldn't worry about it right now.
Okay. So, anyways, what happens is we were there. I send him on the face attack. He goes, he does the face attack, and I forgot, or I didn't know. Actually, I didn't know that I was supposed to tell him guard. So I was just training Teddy out, and he would let go. He would lay down. Everything was great. And so, hold on. I'm gonna get someone to take care of that for me.
And just to add to the barking thing, what's going on, I've had that happen before when I was doing a podcast or a Zoom call. Dogs bark. It's in their nature. There's nothing wrong with it. I get it all the time from the missus. She doesn't like the dogs barking. I'm like, I got a Malinois and a German Shepherd. They're gonna bark. Can you pull up another question? Is there another question?
Yeah, for sure. So here, let me finish my thought real quick. All right. So, anyways, I had him Teddy out. Well, I added guard.
Yeah, and that threw him off.
Like, he literally looked at me like, what? And then he looked at the decoy. He looked at me, and he stayed with the decoy. So I was like super proud of him because there was some critical thinking that happened at that point, right? So he was able to identify and recognize the situation.
And you said it in the same sort of voice that you use for your typical commands. So he hears it and he goes, that sounded like it could have been a command, but I'm not sure. It's kind of the same look that you can get from a dog if you use a marker and you change the way it sounds. So if you go, yes, all the time, and then one day you go, yes, your dog will be like, that sounded like something I know. It sounded like it could have been the marker, but it was a little bit different. Yeah, situational. But I mean, what do you expect? You throw in a new word randomly, you're going to get a different behavior. Especially with dogs that are more trained. Like if you have a dog that's done more obedience and you throw in a new word and you present it in the way you would any other command, you're going to get something from the dog. The dog's going to look at you. They might try to problem solve. And that's exactly what you saw with Teddy. Something that we see with more intelligent dogs, or again, dogs that have been through more training.
Awesome. All right. So we got one more question right here. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, let's end it within the next like 15 minutes. I still got to get to the gym. I gotta maintain.
You know what? I was actually going to talk to you about that. I definitely think you need to get to the gym. I didn't want to bring it up in front of everyone, but it's definitely something that we need to start focusing on.
Yeah, been slacking. Yeah, so, okay, this question is, my main fear is letting the dog walk free and a stray comes up. I have 2 extra large dogs, Mastiff and Dane Mastiff mixed. What should I do in that situation? Now, when you're saying the dog walking free, and I'm looking down because I have it on my laptop here, and up here it's reversed. But when you say walking free, do you mean on a remote training collar? Do you mean just loose next to you? Do you mean no remote collar and the dogs are just wearing their normal collars? What's the situation exactly? And then if we're just going to answer the question, if a stray comes up, I'll give you some answers that some other trainers I know have done. So some trainers I know have carried one of those bullhorns or blowhorns.
So real quick, so she said on leash. Now I do want to point something else out real quick, Nate. So Jacqueline, she's on. She said hello from California. This is the dog trainer I've been telling you about, the one that I get coaching.
Oh, excellent, nice.
She is absolutely amazing. And I hate to put you on the spot, Jacqueline, but if you wanted to come on, I would send you the link and you can come on with us. But if you don't want to, I understand. No big deal. No
Yeah,
pressure.
based on what I've heard, I would like to have you on my podcast. The way that I'm going to be doing it is we're going to be doing interviews, not live, and then the following week a live Q&A. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, we could have a fun conversation. So with this, again, what is it called? Blowhorn, the big burn, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Is that called a blowhorn? Yeah. So I've known trainers that carried those. And so they would have it on them. And if a stray dog would run up, they would blow the horn. Loud noises are going to scare most dogs. Now that's probably going to scare your dogs as well, unless you get them conditioned to it. But loud noises can be very effective. I've had other trainers carry cattle prods. That's a little bit more aggressive. But if you're trying to protect your dog and the other dogs are not going away, that could be an option. I think having something like a blowhorn is a very easy and usually pretty effective way to keep other dogs at bay. But you can't control the other dogs really directly. So doing something like that could be helpful. Do you have anything to add to that, Sergio?
I'll tell you. So this past week, I was over in Mexico, and one of the things that really happened a lot is there's a lot of stray dogs, a lot of street dogs. It's super dangerous, all right? And Mexico is what it is, right? So I was up on this like mountain, okay, and I was staying in like this a beautiful home, okay, beautiful, but definitely not very similar to what we would stay in here in the US, right? But anyway, so I was up there, and so I had to go down the mountain. There was like 5 sets of dogs that Teddy and I had to go through and walk around and things like that. And so what I did was I managed my distance, right? So with anything, we talk about threshold with the dog, right? So those dogs are going to have very similar threshold, and Teddy is non-reactive. Like I can walk by him. So one of the things I always do with the families I work with, if I hear a dog barking, immediately I am providing a reward to my dog. So now the bark predicts a reward, right? So Teddy hears the dog barking. He looks at me because he knows I'm about to pet him. He looks at me because he knows I'm about to give him a reward. And what I do is I just essentially try and stay away from them, and I just keep it moving. I don't run. I don't move any faster. I make sure I'm aware of what's going on. Now, I will say this: if we did get dog attacked or whatever, dog attacked. I don't know if that's if I phrase that.
We all know what you're talking about.
Right? I feel like I just learned English yesterday. If we get attacked by the dogs, 100%, 100%, I'm going to allow my dog to defend themselves. I think one of the common mistakes we do is we keep our dog on the leash and we're yanking them and we're correcting them. And now, like, dude, it's too much.
Well, I've had a stray dog come running up. I don't know if it was a stray dog or someone else's dog. But what I did, it wasn't my dog that I had with me. I put the dog behind me and I blocked. And I kept the other dog away, and then it ended up running off. So it didn't escalate into anything, but I didn't have any additional tools. So I think if someone is afraid, having something to get the dog to go away, because you also don't, I mean, if you could prevent it, yes, you want your dog to be able to defend themselves, but at the same time, you don't want your dog to be in a situation to where they have to defend themselves.
100%.
Right? So it's conflicting.
I'm not saying like we're Michael Vick over here. All right.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. Exactly. I'm saying if we can find a way to prevent it, that's what I was saying. Like maybe the blowhorn, and like I said, some other trainers I know, they carried cattle prods. Hopefully they never have to use it. But I mean, if a dog attacks their dog and latches on, they'd have the cattle prod there to get the dog off. I mean, if you're thinking about the well-being of yourself and the dog, those are measures that could be taken. And I think that's better than like, carrying a pistol or something. We don't want to kill another dog. We just want to get it go away. You know what I mean? That's why I like the blowhorn idea. I think the blowhorn would work very well on most dogs because instinctively through evolution, loud noises are dangerous. It gets you. It's the way, I mean, same thing with people. Something loud goes off. What do? We respond because what happened when people were evolving? Loud noise would go off. Everyone would take off. And guess what happened to the person who didn't take off? They're not with us anymore. And so the DNA is we all take off. You know what I mean?
Right.
So instinctively, I think the blowhorn's a really good option.
Yeah. So I do want to touch base before someone does like a little clip of me saying that I'd let my dog defend themselves. Um,
I don't
so
think anyone's going to.
yeah, this is the thing, right? Is avoidance and management, right? You want to try and manage that type of behavior. The blowhorn is a great idea, 100%. If you're used to walking in that area and you know that there's dogs, avoid that area, right? So you know what I mean? It's like, how do you want to
Prevent
fight?
it, like you said. Yeah.
Right, sure. Like, how do you want to fight? Avoid it. Avoid the fight.
Yep.
So
I think that's a good answer, though. What's the next question? Only got like 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
Is there another question? Is Bill still hanging out with us? For those that are listening, Bill Church, that Sergio brought up the comment earlier, he has a great podcast called Bow Wow Bill. I would definitely recommend checking that out. He's going to be on my show as well, so that should be fun. Are there any other questions?
Right now, I'm not seeing any other questions. We have 7 viewers right now, which thank you so much. If any of y'all have any questions, let's get them out there. But if not, what I want to do real quick is I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my first French ring trial.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So once again, I kind of touched on it before. I thought Teddy did amazing. So first off, it was a great experience. I think that anyone that has a pup should go to some sort of trial, right? Whether it's AKC obedience, rally,
Dock diving.
dock diving, like any of that stuff. Like, go check it out. Like, it is super cool to see what these dogs are capable of, right? And things I would have done differently is I wish I would have seen a trial before I went to my first trial.
Oh, you didn't even see a trial before going?
No, never.
That's pretty good, man. Kudos.
Never seen it. I just showed up, bro.
Just do it. Feel the fear and do it anyways.
Yeah, and so we did it, and Teddy did his thing. There's a lot for me to learn, so that was cool. Definitely learned a lot, and everyone was so nice. And surprisingly, I didn't know this, but French ring is like huge in Mexico. Like, it's a thing, dude. Like, it's absolutely amazing. But it's cool. So that was super neat. Everyone was super nice, super helpful. I did try decoy selection, okay, and let me tell you, it kicked my butt. All right.
It was probably pretty hot outside too.
It wasn't.
No?
But it was 10,000 feet up in the air though. The elevation.
Yeah, oxygen. Yep, of course.
Yeah. So, but it was cool. So I felt the selection. No big deal. Know what I can work on. But it was super fun. So tomorrow, I'm kind of on a kick. I'm gonna go do a morning class, right? So I have a morning group class tomorrow morning, and right afterwards, I'm gonna take Teddy and Harley, and they're gonna go do their AKC CGC, okay, which we should be fine. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
And
pretty easy.
yeah, and then we're probably gonna do their fetch novice, and just to get them accustomed to like doing like trial type pictures. And I know it's different, and people will say, "Oh, well, it's different than French ring," and blah, blah. Yes, it is. It is different. But what's not different, or excuse me, what's different is what's the point for me, right? Being able to get my dog to perform the commands that I want, different people around, different environments, different sights, different sounds, different smells. Like, that's only going to help me. It's not going to make us any worse when we go to trial for ring 1, or when I take Harley for her brevet. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, well, because you went and did a CGC, now you're worse at this or that. I personally don't think that that's the case. It's like, cool, I got
it. Dependent on the situation, though, for sure. Like, if you're looking at it, depends on what you're trying to compare it to. if you're comparing it to, let's say, Mondio ring in comparison to Schutzen or even PSA, the retrieves for those are different. And so what they want for a dog and a retrieve for Schutzen is different than what a dog in Mondio is. And I say Mondio ring and PSA because they have those dogs retrieve all kinds of random stuff.
Right.
Where it's
So
always the dumbbell in AKC and it's always the dumbbell in Schutzen or IGP.
right. So what I'm talking about necessarily is not necessarily the exercise, right? Or what they're bringing me, right? So for instance, for the novice fetch, they're going to bring me a ball.
Mm.
Right? So for
That's like play.
Huh?
That's play basically.
For sure. For sure. It's just play. I'm gonna throw a ball, they're gonna bring it to me. It's super cool.
Oh, great.
But when French ring, like they do eyeglass cases or socks, right? Things like that. So it's not the same, but the act of bringing something to me on command is, in my opinion, going to help with overall generalization and understanding of command. Right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I'm not saying that, oh, it's the same. It is not the same, but that's my point, and that's why I think that there is some benefit to it.
Yeah,
right?
well, when people say that type of stuff that I was bringing up, it's like if you want to win at the top level in Schutzen, then just focus on the Schutzen retrieve. If you want to win at you know what I mean? Because there's certain things that are different in each sport, and if you want to be a specialist in that sport, you don't do anything outside that could jeopardize not losing any points. And I think that's what people are talking about. But if we're looking more at enriching the dog's life, doing different things and different experiences, and if our focus is not so much on our ego and getting the best score possible, but rather giving the quality of life to our dog in which they deserve, the best that we can possibly provide, that should be our real goal as owners and trainers. And by doing more things and that enriching your dog's life, that's valuable.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a lot of it. Oh, we got one more question. Here we go.
Perfect.
I know you're almost done. Have you started taking your pre-workout?
No, I knew this was going to be a while, so I'm going to take it right after. Okay. Aside from carrying something or avoidance, is your demeanor or vibe wouldn't carry through the dog? So I think what is being asked is how I present myself. Is that going to get the other dog to go away if I present a certain picture? Is that what you're asking? Are you getting the same thing?
Yeah, so I think so. But so it reminds me, because I spent a lot of time reading the decoy rule book the past couple of weeks. It says present yourself in a menacing fashion.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
is that menacing?
It's gonna work on some dogs. So if it is like, do I make myself bigger? Do I act more confident? But this is where there's something that we have to consider. There's this show on Netflix. So we're going to consider a show for a moment, and it's called Explained. And in the show, they have an episode on dogs. And in this episode on dogs, they did an experiment where they collected sweat from different people at different emotional states. So someone who is afraid, and they did that by showing them scary movies or happy movies, things like that. And so they collected the sweat, they put it in these little containers, and they placed those containers in an empty room. And then they had dogs come in and smell the container. And the dogs reacted as though they were around the person with that emotional state. So they fed off of the smell. So the person where they collected the sweat that was happy, the dog started wagging its tail, it became happy. The ones that were afraid, the dog reacted in the same way. This is why they say dogs are often a direct reflection of their owner, and why you might come across someone and they go, all dogs love me. Well, it's quite possible that that person is just genuinely a very happy person. So the point that I'm trying to make is you can't fake confidence. A dog can smell right through that. So if you're actually afraid and you're fearful, the dog's going to be able to smell that. That's why just acting confident when training dogs doesn't work. Confidence comes as a byproduct of knowing you can handle a situation if it escalates or if the dog responds or reacts in a certain way. And this is something that I talk about with a lot of dog trainers, like what makes professional dog trainers valuable to people that are not professional dog trainers. It's our frame of reference. We've worked with so many different dogs and we've seen so many different things that we can bring that experience of that frame of reference directly to your dog. So, is it possible to make yourself look a menacing way to prevent a stray dog from coming up? Sure. I'm sure it's possible. You might be able to yell, "Hey, get out of here." And some dogs are going to back up, some dogs are going to go away. But having something as a backup, like a blowhorn, I think is something worth doing, even if it only increases your confidence of being able to handle a situation if it were to escalate to the point where the dog's running straight at you. So, a deterrent, great. Make yourself look big and scary. Yell at the dog if you need to get them to go away. But if they keep coming up to you, having that backup plan, I think, is going to give you that extra edge that might be necessary in that situation.
Right. So, and honestly, what we're talking about is pressure, right?
Pressure.
Yeah.
How so?
So if you're trying to act menacing, right?
That's a form of pressure. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, absolutely right. Yep.
like some dogs will fold under the pressure, some
Mhm.
thrive, and they're gonna fight, right? So
And it
kinda
depends. Yeah. It depends on what the
dog.
dog's been exposed to before. We don't know what these stray dogs have seen. We don't know how they're going to respond to it.
Yeah.
So, did that answer their question? I hope it was at least somewhat helpful, somewhat valuable.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it was. So that question was from my friend Orlando. So he has a wonderful dog, Neeks. Okay, standard poodle, and Neeks is Luca's sister.
Mm.
Different mother, different father, but they're still sisters.
Cool.
All
Well,
right.
I think this was a fun conversation. I think we hit a lot of key points, very interesting subject matter, and some good questions that came in.
Awesome. Yeah. So Nate, once again, I want to thank you for taking the time. Okay, almost 2 hours of your day to be here with us and share your expertise, your experience, your education, your training, all of that with us. Um, yeah. So just thanks for everything. Thanks for being a wonderful friend all these years, and yeah, we'll get you scheduled again.
The feeling's mutual. I had a blast.
All right. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Oh, real quick. I should have said this first. Guys, for all you that watched or are watching the replay, whatever the case may be, thank you so much for tuning in. All right. What I plan on doing is monthly, I'm going to get with dog trainers that are so much better than me, so much smarter than me, and we're all going to learn a little bit of something from them. Okay, so every month I hope to have someone new on. Now, if Nate's up to it, I'll bring him on a little bit more often, just because once again, I'm biased. He's my best friend. I love hearing him talk, things like that. But let me know who y'all want on. Okay, the only person I will not have on is a person, and he probably wouldn't even accept. But the Z guy.
No,
He's like Voldemort.
He probably wouldn't accept.
Oh no, he wouldn't. I'm not important enough. It's like Voldemort. We don't say his name. The Z person.
Yeah, no, other people have asked him to come on their podcast to have a debate sort of conversation, and he won't do it.
Oh, well, all right, guys. Thanks for everything, guys. Bye.
See you later.